My name is Francena Hodge. I was born in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. My mom and dad were very young and had 4 wonderful children. We lived in the middle of the city. You could go from our home up to the Union Station. As a matter of fact, my brothers used to go up there to swim in the reflection pool, and my grandmother would beat them back home. And we could go to the White House. We didn't do much of and didn't really appreciate where we were until we got older. My dad left my mother when I was about maybe 3 years old. My grandmother, my father's mother, moved us into her home, and that's how we stayed in the city. Eventually, my mother moved out, and she left my sister and me there with my grandmother. My brothers went with my mother to her mother's. We never knew why we were split up. I didn't until I was maybe 40 years old. My brother told me, but it didn't make a difference with us because even though we were split up, we were always celebrated Easter, Christmas, and what have you. As I began to get older, I guess I was more of the rebel rouser and the different one. My brothers were quiet and, well, not my oldest brother, but my younger brother was quiet and very mild-mannered. And I was always adventurous and taking them by the hand and showing them where to go and what to do. After getting married, I had 2 children. I worked for the federal government. I started as a clerk typist. I guess I could type about 90 words a minute at that time. And I worked at the Treasury Department. My first job was at the Treasury to send money to the Federal Reserve banks. I had just gotten my first job when President Kennedy was inaugurated, so I could go to my office and hang over the banister and see him come from the White House down past the Treasury, which was, history was always something for me and for my husband. I think that's what made me marry him, because he was different. He didn't want to just go to the parties. He wanted to go to the monument or to the museum or something of that nature, which was different. And eventually I moved from being a clerk typist to a secretary in education. And there I became a program officer. I went to Bowie State, and my husband worked while I went to school, but I also worked because my boss decided that I was going to go to school. And I said to him, I don't know how I'm going to go to school with 2 babies, but I did it. I went to school, and after that, the program that I worked for was called the Black Teachers, Displaced Teachers in the South, and I was a program officer there. I helped Dr. Mays, who was the president of the college, to write the program. We wrote it on a napkin, gave it to him so he could submit it, me and Dr. Carter. So I've always been involved some kind of way in some kind of activism. And then the program was transferred to the field, so to the regional offices, and I was to go to one of the regional offices. So I came home and said to my husband, I guess we gonna move. I ain't sure where we're going yet, but I guess we gonna move. But he was always amenable. It didn't take much if it was something new and something different and something beneficial to his kids. I had 2 kids, and I thought the best place for us to go is to California. He said so too. He said, the kids will get a better education there. Let's do it. And that's how I got to California. When I came to California, I worked for the Office of Education. Eventually, I was transferred to the Department of Student Loans, where we collected student loans. And the boss that I had, Dr. Gary, was a Spanish-speaking man, and he said to me that we needed to hire, I think it was about 200 folks. And I said, oh, great, we can do that. And I began to hire. Then he said one day, well, you just hiring black folks. I said, well, that was your job to hire the others. And he says to me, well, nothing I can do, okay. You know, and eventually he asked me to go one day over to the Labor Department to have lunch with a guy. His name was Charles Hampton. And Dr. Hampton was going to be the regional director for student loans. So I asked him, I said, well, you know, do you know anything about loans? He said, oh, no, but I can manage. I said, well, let's do your resume. So we did his resume. Dr. Gary hired him. And eventually I became his assistant in student loans. Then we had to develop a program to collect, and that's where I met Marguerite. Marguerite came to collections. I basically didn't really know too many folks there, and my career, I ended there. I came out of the federal government, left there, and opened a travel agency in Vallejo. I stayed there for 15 years and got breast cancer, came home, and went to work for Contra Costa County, the director. Couldn't do it. I came home, and now I'm retired.